So this notation right here is saying that the entire sine function is being squared. So here's an equivalent way of writing this expression. Sine of negative x squared. And then same thing with cosine. This is an equivalent way of writing it. I think they might call that shorthand, what they've written in the top. A little easier to write than this, but man, does that confuse students in their first learning about trig. Okay, that's important because eventually we're going to see if we're squaring a negative, and that lets us use a Pythagorean identity. So when you have a negative number in the argument of sine, that's the same thing as moving the negative on the outside. And that's because sine is what we call an odd function. So that's a property of odd functions. They have to be odd. So if you punch in your calculator sine of negative 20, that's the same thing as sine of 20 with a negative sign on the outside, like multiplying it with negative 1. You can check that real quick with your calculator. Okay. Cosine is even. That means if you have a negative value inside the argument, that's the same thing as if it was positive. So cosine of negative 30 equals cosine of 30. Notice I'm saying cosine 30, not negative cosine 30. So cosine of negative 20, that's the same thing as no minus sign. That's the only difference, cosine of 20. You can check that with the calculator too. So that means we can change that to just be positive x. Okay? And now the next realization we have to make is that negative sine squared is positive sine squared. And this over here is still squared. And this is one of our Pythagorean identities. Anytime you see sine squared plus cosine squared, it makes 1.